Welcome, IT changemakers, to the DEX Show with Tim Flower and Tom McGraw. Let's get into it.
Tim, right, so we've previously talked gaming on this pod with the great Adam Grant, no less, right? And we spoke, I'm sure you recall, about Mario Kart. Now, that was perfectly proper for our conversation with Adam Grant. He'd done a whole TED Talk on the topic after all. But now I got to confess something, man. I got to confess because we're here to really drill a bit deeper into the topic of gaming and its relevance in general to the future of the digital workplace. But I have to confess that since those Mario Kart days back in like the mid and late 90s, mate, I haven't spent 5 minutes playing a video game. I don't know what I'm talking about. Please tell me, Tim, you've got more to your gaming background than the Mario Kart. Please.
Oh, there's definitely more to the background. And even today, Tom, what I found is it kind of is a decompressor for me. You get in front of a gaming console and you immerse yourself into a different world and all your work stress kind of goes away. But yeah, I go back to the kind of the mainstream Xbox stuff, the Tiger Woods, the Madden, NASCAR and Forza. But even before that, things like the PC gaming before there were consoles like the Doom and Heretic and Wolfenstein. And then even before that, the old Atari and Commodore 64 and the TRS-80 video games used to be text. There were no video. We did adventure games in text. That's how old I am. But yeah, so I got a long history of video games. I can't break that.
Funnily enough, my son, my 6-year-old, my eldest son, just started playing Minecraft on an iPad. So this is like, and if you hadn't really looked at a video game for like 20 plus years, as is the case you think it hadn't really moved on very much in terms of graphics. You think, oh, look at that. But I appreciate Minecraft might not be hugely representative of the elite modern game. But this is a relief, Tim. You're gonna hold the fort a little bit then in our conversation with our guest today, and let's move on to introducing him. He is Johan van Amersfoort. Sorry, Johan, that wasn't the best pronunciation. Self-described as the bearded VDI junkie. He's a prolific author technologist at ITQ, and by my counts, having spoken to Johan before, something of a futurist too. Johan, welcome to the DEX Show.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Great pleasure, sir. Great pleasure. Tell us a bit about your work and your books to get things going, if you would, Johan.
Yeah, sure. So I've been working in the EUC space for over 20 years and probably spent the last 10 years or so focusing on VMware technologies and VDI in particular. Like you mentioned, I'm an author. One of my my dreams in life was to become an author, to write something, and together with a personal leadership coach, I took all that was in front of me away. And because, writing a book or making the decision to write a book is it's a hard one. There was always an excuse. She helped me to take away all those excuses and just start writing. And one of the things that I wanted to write about is challenges or reducing the challenges I find at customers. So I'm a technologist at ITQ Consultancy, and I've been working as an architect in the UC space for many years. And one of the things that I'm always, what wonders me in a weird way is how poorly architected a lot of VDI solutions are, or EUC solutions are in general at customers. Now the second book came because I wrote a sequel last year, and I think this is one of the reasons why we're having this conversation. From 2018, when I released the first book to let's say the end of 2020, a lot has happened, and I was brought into a lot of different customers, and one of my I would say one of my passions within EUC or within the VDI space is to I'd like to create the art of the possible and basically run any type of workload or show a customer that they are able to run any type of workload on a VDI, even with their business requirements or their business outcome in mind. So, and those different types of use cases I I got to work with in those, let's say in those 2.5 years, were kind of documented in the new book. So the new book strongly focuses on use cases, but pretty much weird use cases. And one of them is indeed gaming. Fun fact is, a fun story, how the second book was kind of created was, I was involved with a customer, and the customer, they had a normal client server solution with an EMR application, so a healthcare customer. And they were investigating if VDI was something they would be viable for them, but it was a technology push through IT. So which means that the wrong business requirements and the wrong, I would say, the wrong approach up front was being taken, because without the business and like in that case research teams and the actual doctors being at the forefront of that technology push, it won't ever like be accepted. So a great user acceptance or a great technology adoption starts with talking to the business. Now, IT didn't do that. They completely missed that step. And in their first approach to implement the VDI platform in a proof of concept, that completely failed. So no one of the important people within the business accepted the new platform. And so I was introduced at the customer and to help bring that technology into the business. And what I wanted to do that in a way that it would still people will still remember that they touched the technology. And what we did is we built a proof of concept with a virtual desktop infrastructure that was able to run a complex application that is single-threaded, that requires a lot of graphical acceleration, that requires a lot of RAM, has some certain disk I/O that you need to take into account, has some application virtualization challenges. And if you take all of those different characteristics into account, one of the first things that came to mind was, well, why not virtualize a game? Oh, and one of the things I forgot to mention is that it needed to support weird peripherals, weird medical peripherals that you need to, redirect through a virtual desktop session. Another example of something that is part of gaming nowadays as well. Take a steering wheel or a game controller or something else. Those weren't necessarily designed to run inside the virtual desktop. So that's basically what we did. We purchased a couple of play seats, which are like racing seats, some cheap thin clients, a pretty beefy VDI host, and ran an F1 game on that platform. And we had two seats, one with the actual virtual desktop and one with a gaming PC. And we didn't mention anything about VDI. So we put those machines into the lobby of the hospital as a gimmick, like a campaign. Let people try racing, competing to each other. And we placed that there for a month. And after a month, I came in and brought the surprise to the business. Hey guys, you were actually racing on a VDI platform. Did you notice anything about latency, or did you notice anything about performance issues or anything? And they were completely blown away by the result. So as a result, we were brought into the organization, and 2 years ago, 1.5 years ago, we finalized the project with 3,500 end users running on that VDI platform. And it was a big success. And it came to play because of gaming. So yeah. And this is one of the reasons why the second book was written. Those weird use cases make sense in a reason that if a weird use case runs on a platform, a less weird use case that is more representative to the business will run there as well.
Amazing, Johan. It's a great anecdote, and it was exactly that. You're quite right, but got me really thinking about analogies we might find between modern gaming and the modern and indeed future digital workplace. So I wonder if you could unpack that a little bit more. One thing that occurred to me is that modern work as we think of it, hybrid or remote or whatnot, in a way that was prefigured by online multiplayer gaming, right? And I wonder what trends are currently in vogue in gaming, which you think might point to further future applications.
Yeah, that's a really good question. One of the things that we are seeing, and that's not really tied to gaming, but tied to delivering applications in general, is that delivering them on demand is something that we see more and more often. And it's normally for web-based applications to be delivered on demand, but for traditional applications, it's not. Now, we've been doing this in the enterprise space for many, many years. I started working with on-demand delivery of applications through WinFrame, Citrix WinFrame in the late 90s. I always make the joke that I started my career in the late 90s, but I actually started my career in December 99. And back then, through that technology, we were able to deliver those applications on demand whenever a user or an employee needed to get access. Now, for, let's say, the gaming industry, when gaming wasn't necessarily, or when online gaming wasn't a thing yet, we played games, installed them on a machine, and played it locally, installed it through a CD. That was all perfectly fine. Now, when games were still being installed through floppy disks or on a CD-ROM, also that were perfectly fine, because installation of such a game wasn't, it didn't take a lot of time, and starting such a game maybe took a couple of seconds, but that was it, right? Now, one of the trends we're seeing is that, especially look at like a modern gaming console, like a PS5 or an Xbox, or even like a PC game. If you need to install a game, you're not doing that through a CD-ROM or a Blu-ray disc or whatever anymore, because all games are being delivered as a download through a gaming engine like Steam, or through like proprietary technologies on a console. But downloading a game and running it, so downloading a game that is like 40, 50, or 60 gigs in size, and then playing it, that takes a lot of time, especially in areas that don't have massive bandwidth connections. Like I'm here on a 600 megabit connection, which is quite average for the Netherlands. But I've been working in the Middle East, for instance, for a couple of projects before, and there's not that much bandwidth there. Now, bandwidth in general is one of those issues, and latency is as well. So if you could potentially move the latency to a different location, instead of the latency from your local PC to a gaming cloud, you're moving the latency from your local PC to a remote PC, and have the remote PC play that game over that cloud, and the connection between the gaming PC or the remote PC and your own local PC, that is let's say a bit more latency tolerant, play that game over a WAN connection. As a result, you'll see that the gameplay is a lot better. You'll see that playing that game over like a remote desktop connection gives you the advantage of having on-demand access to the game, let you pay for just use instead of pay for the game itself. So that's one of the things I forgot to mention. If you want to play a game, 9 out of 10 times you need to buy it. Now, the whole idea behind technologies like Netflix, for instance, is you don't buy a movie anymore. You just buy access to the movie for as long as you need it. And we're seeing those types of technologies or those types of services move to the gaming industry as well. So instant access, better bandwidth control, pay for access whenever you need it. And one of the most important ones, I don't have an Xbox or a PS5. I have, in this case, and the listeners don't see this, but this is an Intel NUC with a, in this case, a GeForce card inside in it. But through a gaming engine, like for instance GeForce Now, I'm able to play games that weren't necessarily built for this console or this PC, but still play them. The same with like an Xbox client on an iPhone or on some other device. You're not specifically tied to a specific console anymore. You can basically play any type of game on any type of device. And I think that's one of those great advantages as well. And if you think of all those different aspects, they roughly translate to what we've been doing in the enterprise for VDI platforms as well. It's the exact same thing.
Without a doubt, and hearing you talk about the gaming latency in either slow bandwidth or heavy latent environments, it's the exact use case in the enterprise, and why our original VDI was stood up, because we had developers in India running development code on their local desktops. They might as well have been a million miles away from Connecticut in the US, and the performance and coding for them was horrible because they had to talk to a database that was a million miles away on the back end. So we couldn't really, for lots of reasons, export and synchronize the database so it was local to them. So we brought their PC in a virtual way to us, and then they remoted into the VDI session, and you remove that latency because basically both machines are now in the same room. And all you've got to do is remotely connect to it and then execute what you're going to execute. So it's the same, that connection between virtual gaming and those solutions and what's being solved for in the enterprise are practically parallel. What do you see is next? What's coming next, Johan? We look at, I mentioned, video games before they were video, the text gaming, and both the graphics and the horsepower and a 50 gigabyte set of code to run a game. The technology has advanced so much. What's next, right? What do you see next on the horizon that could maybe give us some insight into what's next in the enterprise?
Yeah, that's a really good question. One of the things that we are currently doing is still virtualizing or using remoting protocols that were built for basically 2D workloads, right? So sure, I can play a game like a Star Wars Squadrons game within a Horizon-based virtual desktop, but the connection protocol wasn't intentionally built for those 3D workloads. So one of the things that we're currently seeing, and one of those examples is, for instance, Netflix. Netflix is starting to offer gaming, for instance. They built their own remoting protocol that is purposely built for remote gaming. And Google Stadia are doing that as well, or Google with Stadia and Microsoft with their, I think it's Xbox Online or xCloud, just like NVIDIA with the GeForce Now. But those are still remoting protocols built for a normal PC or a normal device, like a mobile device. Now, one of the things that we're currently seeing is, and that's what I'm super enthusiastic about, is the trend of VR coming up. So virtual reality is one of those technologies that's been here for many years, or a couple of years at least, but it started to emerge in the enterprise. And it's also a perfect example of where gaming and the enterprise are converging, or are again showing the same use cases, being able to be virtualized in the same way through specific technologies. And a great example of that is that I've been working with a hospital again that is using VR technologies for pain relief. So if you have an oncology hospital and they have patients that need to go into chemotherapy, they could easily be there like an entire day with an IV attached. And one of the things they do is they offer such a patient a VR experience in which they can easily like play or emerge all day and have that pain relief through a VR technology. And if you offer such a service to the enterprise, the challenge is to, offer applications remotely. So you need to have a certain technology in place that can stream such a game or such a enterprise application to the device. You need to be able to manage those devices as well, because a device can break, right? And end users normally break devices. And this is where I've been working with from technology perspective in the last, let's say 2 years, which was finally the actual production technology called the XR Hub was finally released by VMware in the last couple of months, and this is next gen. So we take a device, let's say a Facebook or a Meta based Oculus device, which is a standalone VR headset. It has a chipset of a phone in it, so it's basically an Android device, and it's not powerful enough to run a high performance VR application that you would normally run on a PC, for instance, with a PC attached VR device. Now, through a dedicated remoting protocol that NVIDIA built called Cloud XR, you are now able to stream that high performance, that high demanding, graphical demanding VR application from a remote PC to a relatively cheap VR device with a great user experience, with full control of the actual controllers, with a perfect refresh rate. So if I move my head around, I still have the I don't have issues, latency issues that could create nausea or motion sickness. Yeah, and this is something that's gonna, I would say, change the enterprise from that perspective.
So are we all going to be working in the metaverse in the future then?
We're probably going to be working in a metaverse. I won't say because there are a lot of different companies that are currently trying to build their own metaverse, like Meta does. Microsoft announced something, and NVIDIA has been working on something they call Omniverse for a couple of years now. Something is coming, but I'm not sure which world will be.
It's the Matrix.
The one metaverse.
They should declare war on each other, have like a parallel universe war. Or
right.
That would be an interesting concept.
Wow.
But there are certain aspects of so virtual reality. You know, virtual reality headset is big. It's clunky. It's not necessarily comfortable. But we're seeing a lot of work being done in that space, and one of those innovations that's coming in this year, if all goes well. I was a backer on Kickstarter for a company called Lynx R, and they build a mixed reality headset that's relatively small and has a powerful chipset in it, which should make it a lot more comfortable to wear such a headset. And one of those innovations you're seeing being introduced in that space is not just a headset introducing a VR experience, but also something we call mixed reality. So you basically immerse in a VR environment, but it also integrates your actual live environment into the VR environment as well. And in that case, I could put on the headset, look at my screen in front of me, but also augment certain aspects of VR into my actual live environment, and have instead of a big full screen, like a single full screen window in front of me, I could have 6 or multiple screens, or have the actual Tom Cruise experience like he had in the Minority Report. And this is something that's gonna happen, I am pretty sure, this year, maybe next year, but this is coming to the enterprise.
Great. So, given these developments, Johan, what are the implications for the industry at large about the future of digital employee experience? One could surmise that it's going to become significantly more significant as an already important player in the digital landscape.
Yeah, and I think that's completely true. We've been talking about VDI and a bit about VR, but and I always make fun of this because there's I don't know if he's famous in the UK, but there's or in the US, but there's a German rave artist called Scooter, and he made a song called I think it's called Hyper or so, but he has a phrase in the middle of the song. He says, it's nice to be important, but it's more important to be nice. Now, I took that sentence and kind of change it a bit. VDI is end user computing, but end user computing is not VDI. And what I mean with that is that we used to put everyone in boxes, and we used to go into organizations and do a technology push of VDI into the organization. Here's your platform, please run it. We'll put you in those different use cases, but everyone needs to run on VDI. And if you look at digital employee experience and monitoring of that, it was relatively easy to have such a single, to manage or to monitor such a single technology and use the outcome to predict stuff or to tell higher management that everything is going okay. Now, what we've been seeing in the last couple of years is that people aren't, and I think the pandemic has taught us that perfectly as well, that look at myself. I have a Mac. I'm working from a Mac device, but also have a Windows device next to me. For certain applications, I run a virtual desktop. For certain applications, I run stuff locally. Now, my experience and monitoring my sentiment is essential, I think, for my higher management to understand if I am getting the most out of my working day. And those traditional, let's call them traditional monitoring solutions that were collecting metrics from those virtual desktops now have a challenge, because in general, if I look at my customers, they are mixed in types of they are working in mixed workloads as well. They embrace the entire end-user computing portfolio, and independent of the fact of the vendor. It could be Microsoft, it could be Citrix, it could be VMware. That doesn't really matter. But people are embracing the entire EUC landscape, and I think understanding what the end user or the employee is going through on a working day and understanding their sentiment, understanding if they are getting the most of the working day is becoming essential, because I don't know how it is working in the UK or in the US, but we have a large challenge in people being, employees. There's a what's the right word for that? There's a lot of jobs. There's too few employees being available. So if people hate their job or don't like the way they're working at their current employer, they'll just go out, move on, and go to another job where it's better. So as an employer, it's essential to know what your employees is doing and how they are doing that. And if you need to do something as an employer to facilitate a better way of working. And DEX in general is from a technology perspective, an essential component in that.
A lot of enterprises focus sheerly on the productivity aspect of an employee experience. It's a little more difficult, but an easy jump to look at the impact of productivity to business results like revenue and profitability and even risk. The third leap is to exactly what you're talking about, employee retention. It is so much more expensive to onboard a new employee than to just invest and keep the ones you have. So that piece, I think, it's not the missing piece, but it's the one that is not talked about anywhere near often enough.
Yeah, and people generally tend to forget about the sentiment aspect, because it's quite easy to. So I had another great example. One of the projects I did in the Middle East, I came into the customer, and one of those challenges they had was that the log-on times were 20 minutes on average. So what people did in the morning, they signed into their thin client. They went to the coffee machine, had a chat. And after, let's say, 15 to 20 minutes, they came back to their thin client and their machine was signed in. Now, I was able to reduce the log-on times to 2 minutes average. They had some application-related constraints, which I could not avoid. And so 2 minute average was perfectly fine. And the sentiment at the customer was fine as well, because they still they still signed in, they still went to the coffee machine to get their coffee, but when they got back directly, they were able to sign in. And that was perfectly fine. Now, if I go to a hospital at this moment, at a desk where multiple doctors or multiple nurses are helping multiple patients, They want to switch like sessions really fast. They want to put a smart card or a smart card on a smart card reader and directly sign into the EMR applications through some technology. Now, if I'm delivering that with a 2-minute average log on time, I'll probably get fired within a week. And again, same metric, same process, but with a different sentiment and thus a different employee experience.
We had an example of an executive over about a 3,000 employee call center who actually required them to all come in 30 minutes early just to accommodate booting up their machine, logging in, hopefully not blue screening or hanging and having to reboot again, but needed them all on the phone at a certain time. So 30 minutes in advance just to accommodate technology. And these are hourly workers. So think about 3,000 hourly people on a daily basis. That's 1,500 hours of overtime daily just to fix a technology problem.
And it's an easy business case.
Happy days for the workers, though, eh?
Yeah.
And one of my first projects, I think it was like 10 or 12 years ago with my current employer, was a fun project. I got in to install or to deliver 3,500 docking stations. The customer invested in docking stations for laptops, and I didn't really get why until I found out what the business case was, because people could just put the laptop into the docking station, and within literally 10 seconds they were able to work, instead of 2 minutes of installing everything, opening up the laptop. And if you know that they have hourly workers as well, the business case was fairly easy for them to just put docking stations everywhere. But then back then it was quite oftenly seen as a luxury. So it was actually the first time I installed docking stations on such a wide basis or such a big basis for a customer. But it's all about big numbers and again, trying to get the best employee experience. So
Johan, we need to bring Tom into the 21st century. If he and I are going to play a game, we want to get online. I figured my Xbox is at the forefront, but obviously it's not. What advice do you give me and Tom? What do we need to go buy? What platform do we get on to play the most modern game between here and London? Right.
So it kind of depends on the type of game that you like. I personally have let's say three preferences. One being I'm a big Mario fan, but that doesn't have anything to do with the enterprise gaming. So I got a Switch downstairs, play with my kid. But from a geek perspective, and two of the games that I still show at customers, one being F1, so like a Formula One driving, because using a Formula One steering wheel being redirected through a virtual desktop, that shows the power of USB redirection or peripheral redirection in general. And if you use the right GPU hardware and the right CPUs, you can achieve great user experience and one that's perfectly near to a gaming PC. The second one, there are no viewers, I guess, of this podcast, is an audio only one. Behind me is are a couple of Star Wars Lego sets. I'm a massive Star Wars fan, and one of the games I like most currently is Star Wars Squadrons, and this is one of those games where you can install it on a gaming PC and run it just in 2D. But it fully supports NVIDIA's Cloud XR technology and remote it through that technology to a VR headset. So I can actually play Star Wars Squadrons remoted through a virtual desktop over VMware Horizon on a Oculus Quest and have a great user experience without becoming nauseous. It's so awesome to sit inside an X-Wing, look around through the galaxy and shoot
baddies.
Yeah,
TIE fighters, perhaps. No,
shoot TIE fighters. Yeah. Oh man, it's so awesome.
You've sold it to me, Johan, 110%. I love it. Okay, right. So I think all that remains for us to say is I know there are plans at the moment, Johan, to host you on our DEX Show DEX Hub mothership as a guest author very soon. People can find a link to the DEX Hub in the show notes, but they will also be able to find links to your brilliant book, so they can check that out too. Suffice to say, Johan, that it was absolutely wonderful to have you on the DEX Show for the first time. That was really fascinating.
Good stuff.
Thanks so much for having me. I listened to a couple of shows, and it's always fun to hear people from other industries or other vendors or other, with other aspects from EUC talking about their passion or about the thing they do on a daily basis. So keep up the good work, guys.
Thanks so much, Johan. Till next time.
To make sure that you never miss an episode, subscribe to the show in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast player. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, make sure to leave a rating of the show. Just tap the number of stars you think the podcast deserves. If you'd like to learn more about how NextThink can help you improve your digital employee experience, head over to nextthink.com. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.